Alright everyone, now it's time for a semi-separate little update, again regarding Infowars, semi-separate from the last video involving Politico. That's just Politico spreading the stupid conspiracy theory that it's a conspiracy theory that Silicon Valley is censoring people. Well, obviously, Politico is either very, very ignorant or very, very malevolent in summing things up that way. It's blatantly not true. I think that they know that censorship is prevalent online, that it is targeted harassment against certain political ideologies at this point, and to tell the truth, it's a bullying campaign. And it involves groups like Politico. They're aware of what they're doing. They write hit pieces, they defame people all the time to try to justify getting their competitors deplatformed. Essentially, it's multi-million-dollar corporate entities convincing multi-billion-dollar corporate entities to suppress and censor private citizens because they have the wrong political views or said the wrong thing. They're not criminals, they're not violent, they're not actually extremist or bigoted. They've just been cast that way by CNN of all places, or MSNBC. Rachel Maddow doesn't like them. They confronted Oliver Darcy. What a fucking sin that could be. But Infowars has now been banned from the Apple Store. That is, that their Infowars app that was, again, in the top 5 or 10, very, very popular. Like millions of people downloaded it after Infowars was kicked off of a bunch of other sites because they wanted Infowars content. Now where are they supposed to get it? I think that the Infowars app's still on the Google Play Store. Or, maybe it's been kicked off. If it's there, I wouldn't expect it to be there very long. Trust me, this is going to be a boon for alt tech. Because where are people going to go to actually keep up with what Infowars is doing? There aren't a lot of places left to do that. I strongly suggest, if you are a viewer of Infowars, as I'm sure some of you are, get an account on Gab. They're on Gab. Paul Joseph Watson's there. All the others are there on Gab. You should have an account on Minds.com. I believe Infowars has a presence there. I know Paul Joseph Watson's on there. You should definitely be on BitChute. Infowars #2 BitChute channel. I'm #1. I'm steadily heading towards 30K. There's a possibility that they'll supplant me in the next 48 hours because of this. Because now you have millions of people who had the app. They can't have the app. Now they'll have to use somewhere else. Unfortunately, in the smartphone generation, it gives big corporations even more power over the use of material. It's concentrating even further. Because two fucking companies control basically everything app-related for smartphones. Google and Apple. Apple kicked them off. There's only one left. One single company that doesn't have the greatest track record lately when it comes to supporting free speech. Google used to be the good guys in many ways. I give them credit for that. For years, they stood against bullshit like SOPA and ACTA and PIPA and the TPP and all this other nonsense. Now, not so much. It appears that several corporations have convinced them that it's a good idea to censor its users and alienate and abuse its own fan base based on the fact that someone might be offensive. Alex Jones getting, defamed by the SPLC or something. Mostly, these attacks are defamatory. That is, Apple, after letting him be on the App Store for a month, decided, hey, we kicked him off of part of their, their front page or something of their offerings for Apple, for smartphone users. YouTube kicked him off, as well as, I believe, targeting several groups within Infowars. I think several individuals. And they banned a couple people. Facebook kicked him off. Zuckerberg sitting there basically admitting to the fact that it's a coordinated campaign. He's saying, hey, we had to determine whether all those mass flaggings were in good faith or whether it amounted to raiding or not. Were they being brigaded? Of course they were, because the CNN and groups like that generated a lynch mob to target advertisers, to target corporate tech, began writing defamatory pieces about this organization that competes with them for the same fucking audience retention, and then set them off to go and flag things. That's what happened. That's why they've been banned on all of these sites. It is in bad faith. It is raiding. It's a moral panic lynch mob. We've seen this before 1,000,000 times in just U.S. history. It's happened everywhere in the world. It happens innately. It's part of the cycle of culture. Have you ever read Plato's Republic? It acts upon the human psyche too. It's not just the cycling of government. I'll tell you a secret. I think I've mentioned this just once before, for anyone that doesn't realize this. If you read Republic, you have the movement within 4 sort of spheres of governance. You start off with a democracy, basically a meritocracy. People who are skilled, who are brave, who are strong, who are upright and noble and perceived of as superior, at first run the culture. Everything's fine. It's being run by the right people. Eventually, it devolves into a direct democracy. Other people say, well, why can't we be involved? Something happens, some moment occurs in which the timocracy is not capable of delivering for enough of the people. Usually it's basically the people want more handouts, or the people want to make a stupid decision, and the meritocratic people, they say, well, it's not a good idea, we don't want to do that, and say, well, fuck you, basically, we're gonna do what we want. It devolves into a direct democracy. Eventually, it devolves further into an oligarchy because certain individuals will concentrate their power, usually in a populistic manner. This is the step, by the way, we're in the United States to a lesser degree. That's where a republic kicks in. Then you eventually have a tyranny. One of the oligarchs concentrates power further. Eventually, the tyranny is destroyed through its own ineptitude, through a coup or something. You start the whole process over again. That's the hope, at least. Unfortunately, a lot of times it goes from a tyranny back to an oligarchy, and you sort of gravitate between the two, or you get a direct democracy that's just totally inept. You get a weak government. In a republic, these 4 cycles still operate. It's just that they're more on a timing mechanism, they're a little bit more regular, and they're also lesser. That is, in the good moments of a timocracy, or in the better parts of a democracy, it's not quite as good as it otherwise would be. But in the tyranny or the oligarchy stages, or the inept democracy, it's less bad. It's a more stable entity that you've created. That's the basic premise of Plato. He doesn't go into that second component because he didn't appear to understand that a republic would have the same problems fundamentally to a lesser degree. We see right now, we're in a republic that is decaying away from sort of through the last stages of direct democracy into an oligarchy. We see it with big tech. Government-sponsored groups, given subsidies, they rub elbows with the president, with Congress, with everyone else in the world. Big tech firms, the vast corpus of well-meaning but delusional people, the direct democratic component, is pressuring for the creation of an oligarchy with the tech giants and with central government. That's what they're clamoring for. They're actually clamoring to destroy the republic completely. People don't realize what they're doing. They're gonna think twice once it actually happens. A little bit of prevention is worth a hell of a lot of cure. You shouldn't do this, but, a lot of them, they mean well. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. They actually think it's a good idea because they believe in an army of non-existent Nazis or extremists or whatever. This operates within the human psyche, too. It operates outside of the political system. When you've got a society like ours, in which corporations have ties with government, they go through the same motions, too. The same premise. Silicon Valley initially was built by a bunch of people in their fucking garages, a bunch of dropouts and shit. It was built by a meritocracy of people who almost existed outside of the normal industrial and academic structures. And were laughed at the time. They built Silicon Valley. You then had a period of direct democracy. The earlier waves of the internet were built by a bunch of totally independent individuals signing up for a .com through the early period of social media where the concept was the vast bulk of people is our site. Facebook initially understood this concept. YouTube understood this concept. We don't create anything. The people using the platform create things. And it is a platform. We're not a publisher. We're not responsible for stuff. We are a platform. They understood this. Now they're trying to be a hybrid. Legally speaking, doesn't work that way. Thankfully, eventually it probably gets undone. We're now moving towards the stage of a tech oligarchy. A handful of companies that no longer compete with one another essentially are calling the shots and pressuring and suppressing and destroying all independent competitors. They should be subject to antitrust legislation, but somehow Congress has forgotten to do that. Probably because of what we saw with Marco Rubio, which is he doesn't know anything about the issue. He's one of the youngest people in the Senate. He doesn't know what Infowars is, despite being on Senate Intel, despite the fact that he's openly debating the topic of tech censorship on the same fucking day. That's not strange at all. So it's certainly not a meritocratic system. Otherwise, we'd have people who understand technology representing us when it comes to technology. You'd have a bunch of YouTubers in Congress at that point for the purposes of debate. You'd be calling people like me before Congress to give testimony. Trust me, they don't want people like me going before Congress because we dispel all of their stupid illusions about there being no fundamental central problem with tech censorship. Because we know what to say and how to say it, because we can show, look, it's definitely happening. Hey, look, here's a list of all the people that I know personally who have been deplatformed at various times and their supposed crimes, because we've got them all archived. Yeah, put that before Congress, enter that into the public arena and see what happens. Eventually, you'll have a tyranny. The tyranny will be a trust. We're fast moving towards that. It'll be a more direct form of collusionary trust than we have currently. It won't be a loose oligarchy where there's some dissent, some company might hold out, like Apple waiting an extra month to deplatform Infowars, to deperson Alex Jones entirely. Or Twitter for a couple weeks pretending that it cared about free speech and saying, well, he hasn't broken a rule. Then looking for an excuse to find, a way to ban them. That's quickly passing by the wayside. Pretty soon you won't even need the involvement of dishonest, defamatory NGOs. You won't need groups like the SPLC to coax these other organizations into censoring people. They'll do it on their own. They'll cut out the middleman. The corporate media, the NGOs, they'll stab them in the back, and big tech will just take over entirely. Probably deplatform them in the long term. Absorb them. When Google ends up buying the New York Times, or Mark Zuckerberg says, hey, I think I want to run CNN now. I'm just going to stream it live on our site and we'll absorb them completely. When that happens, a few people might get a little jittery. By then, of course, it'll be too late. It'll require the construction, possibly, of either an alternative to or a second internet. That's the point we might get to. It's quite sad. It could happen. So yeah, Infowars has been banned from the Apple Store, and millions of people, with great applause, the Republic comes crashing down, I suppose. Hey, haha, he's offensive though, so it's okay. Can you imagine if 10 years ago, the evangelicons had been successful in getting every radio station to ban Eminem off of the radio? Can you imagine these same people, these same liberals would have said, well, it's an attack on free speech. They're not supposed to do that. Yeah, well, the government is putting pressure on big tech right now to kick people off. It's not just the corporate media or the NGOs. Those NGOs have ties to the government. People from our government openly, talk with them on a constant basis. Nobody so far in Congress is telling them, hey, cut out the censorship, other than maybe Rand Paul. And Donald Trump, of all things, which I don't know is very helpful at the moment because of how hyperpolarized things are. The only advantage to having Trump weighing in is that it gives greater credence to the fact that an issue actually exists, gives it more exposure so it can be talked about. Now Trump should back off and stop talking about it. Let us handle it. We're the ones that are better at doing so because we're the ones that actually make our living online. That's about all. Peace out.